Will's painting. Stranger Things Season 5 plot theory. If there's one thing we've learned about the Duffer Brothers, is that they love to liken many aspects about characters, adventures, and powers to D&D. This is the obvious initial theme of the show. What I believe is a very big clue as to what kind of climax we're heading towards is the painting Will showed Mike in Season 4. Another thing we've learned about Will is that when he draws or paints something, the characters best pay attention. The painting. In it, we see the 4 original party members, Mike, Lucas, Dustin, and Will, fighting a giant dragon in the style of D&D. I believe this is setting up what will be the climax of the show, Mike, Lucas, Dustin, and Will, having to go forth as a kick-ass D&D party to face down Vecna / the Mind Flayer. You're probably thinking, what about 11? Yeah, I personally think we have to see 11 lose hard to Vecna somewhere in the midpoint or penultimate episode of the season. Why? Well, 11 has faced Vecna twice now, and she's essentially defeated him both times. 11 facing him a third time in this show and beating him again feels a little janky to me. We have to see Vecna show how much stronger he's gotten while he licks his wounds after he got slapped by 11 again. Sure, he had a huge W from killing Max and opening the final needed gate, but 11 has still defeated him twice, and I think it's much more interesting to see him defeat her this season. But, in classic bad guy / plot armor fashion, he won't kill 11 when he can, and instead imprisons / enslaves her to use her as a conduit for more power. This is where our D&D party comes in. Without 11 out of commission, someone will need to step up, and thematically, I think the 4 boys teaming up again to save 11 would be absolutely beautiful. So how could they do this? Well, as many people are theorizing / the show is hitting us over the head with it, I believe Will is the key. I believe Will have not only the ability to track Vecna in the new combined Hawkins / Upside Down, but I believe Vecna, drunk with power with a captured 11, won't exactly be hiding. But Will's major trump card can be his connection to the Mind Flayer. He has danced with this thing several times and survived, and he may have some latent ability / connection / control of this thing that he discovers midway through the season. I just don't think they would build up his little neck goosebumps thing for 5 seasons to only be a plot device for him to say he's here. It has to matter more than that, and I believe it will be a valuable tool. Maybe it even lets him tap into some kind of ethereal / eldritch magic via the connection, which would thematically fit his D&D character as Will the Wise, a wizard. Unfortunately, I do think the likelihood of Will dying is very high. This poor kid has been through so much horrible trauma, I almost feel that writing in his meaningful and sacrificial death is a mercy. I don't think they'll do much more with Will's sexuality. I think Will staying in the closet to almost everyone is fair given the fact that it's the 80s and not 2022 and he may not feel comfortable with many people knowing. I also don't think he'll ever confess his true feelings to Mike, because he'd be afraid of damaging their relationship and he knows Mike won't be able to reciprocate those feelings. Will die? Yes. So, what about everyone else? Eddie, yes, I do believe they're going to go the route of Kaz and bring Eddie back as an undead / vampire of some kind. I don't want to spend too much time on this because this theory is everywhere. But seriously, there are hints galore in the show connected to Kaz lore that it's going this route. Eddie will be back as a villain, probably helps the heroes in the end. Kaz famously betrays Vecna in D&D lore. Will Eddie die, again? Yes. 11, I believe the days of us seeing an underpowered or fledgling 11 are over. She will be in full-blown superhero mode in Season 5. I even believe we may see her fly, as Brenner tells her she must. Sure, he meant it figuratively, but it was done in a way that makes me feel she will literally be flying around blasting Demogorgons and Demobats like freaking Wanda Maximoff. However, Vecna will also be leveled up, and I do expect a massive telekinesis duel between the two that rivals superhero movie levels of power and destruction. Ultimately, I think Elle lives in the end, and lives on happily with Mike and becomes the world's first superhero. We got a ton of on the nose "you're a superhero" 11. In Season 4, even when Vecna and the forces of the Upside Down are defeated / destroyed. This will leave the door open for MBB to appear in future spin-offs down the line that expands the universe and story. It'd be great to see an explanation of what the hell the Upside really even is, and this could explore that. Will 11 die? No. Mike, as I said, I think Mike lives in the end and is happily still dating 11. Their connection is a catalyst for 11's strength. To be honest, I don't have much more to say about Mike, because unfortunately his role has been rather reduced to the hero's love interest. This could change in S5, and Will hints that Mike is the heart and leader of the group. I surely hope Mike has a bigger role in S5, but as of now, I could see him having a similarly sized role as S4. We will see him, along with the buyers, having the most heartbreaking reactions to Will's probable death. Which leads me to, will Mike die, No. Steve, Nancy, and Jonathan. Everyone hates, or loves I guess, a love triangle, and it obviously has to go somewhere. Basically, I think one of the two men here will die, and Nancy will end up with the other. I think it is far more likely for Steve to die for several reasons. Mostly season 4 set up Steve and Nancy again, and Steve gave us his whole family fantasy. It just feels like Steve is being set up to not get the beautiful happily ever after he wants. It's been painted too nicely of a picture for us. Nancy nearly choosing Steve only to have him die and making the choice easier for her to stay with Jonathan seems like an obvious writing choice to me. Doesn't mean it will or should happen, but I think that's what will happen. Also, with me speculating Will's likely death, I don't think the show would kill off both of Joyce's sons. Jesus Christ, the woman doesn't deserve that. She doesn't deserve losing either obviously, but I still think Will's a goner. Perhaps Steve dies and Nancy and Jonathan go their separate ways in the end. Who will die? Steve, yes. Nancy, no. Jonathan, no. Lucas. Watching Lucas grow for 4 seasons is a very underrated part of the show in my opinion. He was always the hothead, but he's matured to be a very caring and grounded dude. However, the plot rarely revolves around Lucas' character arc, so I'm not sure I think Lucas will get a big set-piece moment that wraps up a big arc for him or anything, but as I said, Lucas will be with the other 3 in the climax, fighting monsters and Vecna like a badass. His D&D character is Ranger and he has often used a slingshot, so I believe Lucas might wield some awesome makeshift ranged weapon in the huge fight, maybe even just a straight-up gun/rifle? Either way, in Will's painting, Lucas was on horseback shooting a bow. Lucas' emotional arc will revolve around whatever happens with Max. Will Lucas die? No. Max, I think there's 2 possibilities for what could happen with Max, the one that I want, and the one that I think will happen. The one that I want. Max is completely brain dead. Not because I want Max to be brain dead, but I think it's much more interesting than Max, you woke up. They could have shown us 11 not being able to find her in her brain to allude to this. So, with her being brain dead, what now? Well, Sadie Sink is an incredible actress, and I think it'd be great to see her show off her range by having Vecna use her vegetative body as a vessel/puppet in Hawkins, essentially making Sink's role in Season 5 a villain. While Vecna continues to recuperate and gain strength in the first half of the season, Max's puppeted body wreaks havoc on Hawkins, killing innocents in Vecna-style body mutilations left and right. Imagine a distraught Lucas having to deal the final blow to destroy Max's body to end the carnage it's causing. You'd love to hate to see that, and you know it. What I think will happen. Max wakes up, because of course she's gonna. But, I do think she'll be at least blind, if not partially/totally paralyzed. Like Will, Max will have had a run-in with Vecna and survived. And I believe this will give her some kind of insight/useful trump card against Vecna in the climax. What I certainly don't think will/should happen is Max wakes up and is just fine and dandy by the end of the season like nothing ever happened to her. Her sacrifice has to mean something. Will Max die? Undetermined. She may already be dead. Dustin. Pretty much everyone's favorite character, I know, but like Lucas, I think his role is pretty obvious and spelled out. He will continue to be the genius that figures stuff out, and will be a badass champion in the finale with the D&D squad. He will likely have some kind of Eddie tribute in his arsenal, like a spike shield etc. I think Dustin will have to face off against Undead Eddie and ultimately finds a way to tap into Eddie's soul and convince him to betray Vecna. Will Dustin die? No. Hopper and Joyce. I actually think Hopper and Joyce may take a bit of a backseat this season to everyone else. Of course they will still be heavily featured and present, but I don't think we'll get as huge a storyline with them as we did in Season 4. I think Hopper is a good candidate for death here. Hopper just seems destined for Valhalla. A warrior's death. I think Hopper dying to save Elle or Joyce is much suitable for his arc than him getting to live on in the end. And with several major characters likely dying, I just don't see Jim Hopper not dying alongside them trying to save everyone he can. Again, he has that warrior spirit, still racked with immense guilt over the death of his daughter, and likely will carry that burden forever. It just feels like Hopper sacrificing himself to save those he loves is the way he'd want to go. As for Joyce, I actually think she may die as well. I think with Vecna ultimately being defeated in the end and the heroes winning, 11 being left with no mentors feels in line with her superhero origin story that the Duffer Brothers have created. I could see Joyce sacrificing herself so that Will can carry out whatever action he has to perform to sacrifice himself as well. I don't think Joyce would even want to live on in a world without Will, and them dying together heroically after years of Joyce heroically championing her son could be very heartbreaking, and good TV. Do they die? Hopper, yes. Joyce, yes. Robin. Where I think Will's sexuality storyline ends in Season 4, I think Robin's will be heavily featured in Season 5. Robin will continue tagging along with Steve, Nancy and Jonathan for most of the season. And in the middle of all the apocalyptic nightmare, I think we'll get a heavy dose of Robin's romance with Vicky. I'd love to see the representation in full force, and Robin seems more likely to come out than Will. Will Robin die? No. That's all I have for now. I haven't put enough thought into Murray, Erica, Dimitri, and the rest of the Wheelers. Maybe I'll add more tomorrow. Thanks for reading/listening if you stuck around, and let me know if you agree or think I'm crazy. Also subscribe.